This series is about typical town houses such as terraced or semi-detached. It is a guide to the millions of urban homes built before 1939. Your own home, past or present, may be a typical town house. Part 1 explains the development of such houses from before the Great Fire of London and onwards. Parts 2 to 7 show the late Georgian, Victorian, Edwardian and interwar periods. Most of these periods spanned a generation, but the long Victorian era lasted from 1837 until 1901, so it is presented as early, middle and late. In each period, typical houses are presented as front, plan and back. These introductory images give you the idea. Front shows the distinctive features of that generation. This helps you to quickly identify them. Plan shows the original layout of the interior. Back shows the rear where services and facilities were placed. Large, medium and small examples will be shown, but most attention will be paid to the medium because this is the most numerous surviving form. Many surviving large houses have been subdivided into flats. New features and styles often first appeared on the large houses. The medium-sized houses incorporated as many of the new features as they could. Small houses had the most problems, and not as many have survived. Their problems affected public health, which brought about reforms to remedy them. In each period, similar designs could be found throughout the United Kingdom. They changed each generation because of factors such as health and safety, as well as modern conveniences, taste and fashion. Part 1, 1599 to 1774. How did typical town houses get from this, or this, to this? At the beginning of the 17th century, timber-framed houses were common in towns. The alternative was either brick or stone. Brick had been introduced by the Romans. It was a common building material even in timber-framed houses where it was used for fireplaces and chimneys. Early in the 17th century, a pattern emerged. The first part of the pattern was that the initiative often came from the top of society, so, naturally, style was important. Royal buildings, such as the Banqueting House Whitehall, modelled classical features. The key element in classical design was proportion. When the Duke of Bedford asked King Charles I for permission to develop his lands near the City of London, the king assented on one condition. This was that he employed his own surveyor, the architect Inigo Jones. The Duke of Bedford wanted to attract a good class of occupants who would rent the houses, which were built speculatively for rent. This was the second part of the pattern. Jones's design for the piazza in Covent Garden became a prototype for upmarket urban development. It featured terraced houses made to look as if they were part of a palace. Arcades on the ground floor were combined with pilasters and an emphasis on the first floor. To make them more desirable, they were set around a square or piazza. Nearby, in Lincoln's Inn, similar features appeared, pilasters and emphasis on the first floor, which was known as the piano nobile. Even modest builders could copy these features in plain brick. This was another part of the pattern, that the most significant designs were those which could be copied on a more modest scale. After the Great Fire of London, health and safety in the form of building regulations began to dictate the form of new houses built in towns. The London Building Act of 1667 made it mandatory that all new houses in the City of London should be built of brick or stone, and that the street should act as a really effective fire break. The new houses were built by individual craftsmen. Bricklayers and carpenters needed little more instruction than a few measurements or another house in the street to copy. They could also find additional instructions in inexpensive pattern books with titles such as Builder's Companion or Builder's Jewel. Entrepreneurs, known as projectors, saw opportunities in the rebuilding. Speculative builders and developers ranged from aristocratic landholders such as the Dukes of Bedford through architects and projectors, all the way down to the craftsmen themselves, who might take the risk on a single house or a pair of houses. Speculative building was financed by borrowing. The original meaning of mortgage was builder's credit. The fourth and final aspect of the pattern was the leasehold system. A landholder would grant a building lease on a piece of land, but for a limited period of time. The lawyer or solicitor who drew up the documents could also act as a mortgage broker. The developer or builder would go to work at his own expense. The limited time he had to build was known as the period of peppercorn rent. This came from its nominal payment in the form of a peppercorn. He had to cover in before this period expired. If he failed to complete the structure up to the roof ridge, everything on site reverted to the landholder, who could get another builder to finish the job. A successful builder then sold on to an investor. The system resulted in a new style which was used by projectors such as Sir Thomas Neal or the notorious Nicholas Barban. The new style was terraced, built of brick with sash windows. These first appeared in the 1670s. At first they were set flush with the wall. Later regulations banned any wooden projections like door cases and eaves cornices. Other London Acts stipulated that wooden roofs had to be protected by a stone parapet and that windows were set further back into the wall. The traditional plan was 2 rooms on each floor, with one beside the other, but in towns, where space was limited, the rooms were one behind the other, literally 2 up, 2 down. Other cities, including Edinburgh and Dublin, enforced their own building regulations, but towns afflicted by fire, such as Warwick, adopted regulations based on London's. Stone could be used in areas where it was available nearby. If not, locally made bricks were used. Unlike London, Edinburgh and Bath were in stone areas. In Bath, a mid-18th century boom town, ambitious architects succeeded in selling the terrace to an upmarket clientele. John Wood, father and son, first made the terrace look palatial in Queen Square. Queen Square was a successful speculative development. John Wood the elder bought a lease to the land, then sublet individual plots to other builders who followed his overall design. His classical vision went further as he built the circus, but his son, John Wood the younger, completed a remarkable architectural sequence when he built the Royal Crescent.